Thanks very much, Carol. Hi, welcome. I'm Nikolaus Correll, and I want to build things. So when you build things, you have masonry, you have wood, you have steel, you have glass, and you can build houses, you can build steam engines with that. Maybe you can build airplanes with this. But then we started to innovate new materials. So we have plastic, which is very, very helpful. We have thermochromic, these mood rings. They change their color when when your temperature change. We have carbon fiber, which is an amazing material. You can build ultra lightweight cars or bicycles that some of us like so much. We have piezoelectric materials that from your lighter. You press them and they generate power. So almost everything is possible nowadays with polymers, and these are really just the tip of the iceberg what you can do. And so what I want to do is I want to fast forward and think about something like a liquid that thinks. So imagine you go to the beach, you bring your beach chair. No, you don't bring your beach chair, but you bring your liquid that thinks, you pour it, it assembles into the beach chair, you lie down, you don't have sunscreen, you take the liquid that thinks, becomes transparent, and you lay down. Or you might need a screwdriver, wrench, so you take the liquid that thinks makes the wrench, and you go and use it. And maybe even more crazy, you have a liquid that thinks that can become a robot. And the robot then starts walking and serving you and is being smart and talking to you and everything, but it's just a liquid that thinks. So maybe you think that's impossible, and I think so too, maybe, but I wanted to ask the question, what actually we need to do to get there and really find out whether it's impossible or not. And so if you look at nature, there are a couple of things that are actually liquids that think. So for instance, there's slime mold. You might know slime mold. It's a multicellular organism. Every single cell is a living system. They can coalesce into a big slime and then move together and find food sources and survive together. So it's a really crazy organism, and it's pretty much a liquid that thinks. So maybe it's just sufficient to understand slime mold to move forwards. But there are more interesting things like ants, and ants can do amazing stuff. They find the shortest path. They find food very quickly when you leave it out on your kitchen table. They will find it. They will have that root transported to their nest, all without centralized control. Amazingly smart animal. Maybe that's a liquid that thinks. Looks like a liquid that thinks if you look at the ant heap. Now, there are also termites which can build amazing structures. So the termite mound is really, it has an AC system which takes the hot air up. It changes how the wind goes through the structure. It cools the breed. It provides room for them. And there's no blueprint that they carry around. It's really liquid that thinks, that forms around the mud and creates this structure. And so, of course, there's the brain, which is made from neurons. And the neurons work together, and they make us very smart. They make us become artists. They make us become poets. And it's also a liquid that thinks. It's just not very liquid. It's well. So the common denominator is really there's single cells, and what those cells can do, some of them can move, like muscle cells can move, or they can change their shape. They can sense something. They can sense the environment. They can communicate with neighboring cells, so neurons do that. They communicate with the other neurons. And they compute something. It might be very simple, but they just sense something, and then they make a decision of whether they move or not move, or whether they communicate or not communicate. And that's already computation. And this gives you the brain and all sorts of things. And so if you now look back at the examples I showed you, you have the slime mold, which might be thousands of these cells. You have the ants, where every single ant is maybe millions of these cells, and you have the brain, which is like billions of these cells. So what we try to do, we want to study these things. We want to make systems. We want to make cells that can sense, compute, actuate, and communicate. And we made the droplets, which we call droplets because they make a liquid that thinks. So the droplets are ping pong ball size robots that can sense something we project from above. They can talk to their neighbors with infrared. They can change their color, and they can move around on the surface. And so one thing we want to do with them is we want to study self-assembly. So liquid.things obviously has to assemble into something, and so we can use those droplets and think about how do we have to program the individual ones to make them self-assemble. So look somehow like this, then you have them move until they assemble a shape, and now the shape has to do something, so you can look at cell differentiation like it's done in nature. So you might have them figure out where am I in the system, what is my function supposed to be, and in this case, they change their color to become a guitar. So there's the strut and there's the body. And now what I really want to do with these droplets is why not assembling them on my table, having them change their color, and then use the sensors that they have to detect my hand when I strum it, and detect my fingers when I press notes, and then just vibrate to play music. And so if I can do that, then I had a liquid.things that can make a musical instrument. And maybe you see I could also make a lightsaber, or I could make, well, all the things I could make are not really useful. So they are not really useful, and there was a slide here which said that it asks you whether you can actually do useful things. And I think, yes, you can do useful things with liquid.things, and even if you don't have the liquid.things, which would be very useful. And there's also no money in liquid.things business right now because people don't believe in it, so you have to do stuff that is makes sense. And so one thing that makes sense to me is art, and so I'm working with Michael Theodore, who's a College of Music professor here at CU, and we made this installation which consists of 70 interacting little computers that start shaking, and they adjust their speed and their angle much like animals do in a bird swarm. So that's one application where we can actually build something like a liquid.things and start experimenting with it and playing with it. And I actually believe this one is already, we are not there yet, but I think you can pretty soon think that this thing is alive because people interact with it, they go in front of it, they attribute moods to it, but there is no such thing. It's just little computers that talk to each other like the brain. It's just neurons that talk to each other. The other thing we want to do is we want to make smart facades. So we're thinking about making thousands of individual cubes that you could use to make room dividers or facades. So you see that guy carrying this around. Another is just assembling his room divider. The other is in front of the window and communicates with it by making gestures. And you could have blocks that change their opacity. So you can have privacy or not. You can block the sun or not. You could have cubes that have ventilators to get the air through. You could have cubes that change their color. You have cubes that could play music, or cubes that have fishes in them or plants, and build your own little environment and change it as you like and go and communicate with it with your hands and what you can think of. So another thing we want to do is we are thinking about what happens if you make clothes that are smart. And so we're taking, again, identical little computers and put them together and make fabric that is smart. And of course, we are not there yet, but what we are trying to do is making this smaller and smaller and smaller and have a fabric, for instance, that can detect sound. And this shirt, this dress we call Flutter, it has little microphones all over. It detects the sound. It talks to its neighbors to find out where the sound is the strongest, and then it flutters wherever the sound is coming from. And so this is something deaf people could wear to tell them where sound is coming from, but also helping their hearing aids. And of course, this is really like more a party gag if you're deaf, but maybe in the future you can have just fabrics that you can just print, and they cost just as much as they cost without that computation in there. So we took this shirt, it has the microphones, and we thought maybe we could make skins out of that detect texture. And so when you think about your own skin, you have thousands of little sensors in there. One of is the Caspinian. No, I got it. I lost it. The Caspinian corpuscle, which detects vibrations. And so when you rub your fingers over something, then you actually hear what kind of texture it is with this Capucinian corpuscle. And we made the skin, and you see here we rubbed it at one point. One of these things detected something, and it can tell what texture it actually rubbed, tell it to its neighbors, and maybe route it to a brain. And then we could have robots that have soft skins that detect textures, or we can have prosthetic devices which finally can also feel that. We're also thinking about taking a material like this and wrapping it onto the floor. So you have a floor that can think and a floor that can track you, count how many people are in a room, adapt the HVAC system accordingly. We now thought how to actually get back to the polymers I mentioned in the beginning. There are all these new polymers that we could use to combine to create totally novel materials, like this one, which is a rubber that becomes soft when you heat it and then becomes hard again. And we are thinking about making a sheet which has thousands of little computers that melt the rubber at specific points. And so you could have a sheet that you could roll into any shape you want, and then it remains stiff. And so what you see here is our first prototype where we have a little square which we have melted, we change the shape, and then we stiffen it up again. And so we're thinking you could make casts for your casts when you break your arm. You could make airplane wings that can change from bird-like gliding to flying. And finally, we are looking at the thermochromic materials that you know from your mood rings. And you can just order them, and we can heat them just the same way in a material and have the material change its color. So maybe we can really have wands which you could wear, which change their color as a function of what you have around you. So you could have really true camouflage for yourself or for your vehicle or something like that. You could alert people, you could display things on anything. And so now I think I showed you a couple of examples on how we actually want to get to the liquid earth things. But I think on a bigger level, there are three things we have to do. We have to look into robotics. We have to look into how nature does things, and we actually have to look into materials. And hopefully this can really create a new kind of science to look at materials in a totally new way and eventually really have very useful liquid earth things. Thank you very much.